always idolized Les Paul and Mary Ford. And by the way, Mary Ford was an excellent guitar player, which most people do not know. Les used to do a thing on his show. We used to play a run, and Mary would do the same run, and Les would do another one, and she'd do the same exact thing. Finally, he got to a part where he went all over the guitar, and she started, and he said, "Stop." He said, "You win." But at any rate, he was my idol as a kid. And I bought my first tape machine, and right away I wanted to be Les Paul. And I tried like crazy. And finally, he was going to be appearing at the Meadowbrook in New Jersey, because he still lived in California at the time. And I was just a young, 16, 17-year-old. And I talked the maitre d' into letting me in, and I told him I was a guitar player and I really wanted to come and see. I'm not going to drink or anything, I just want to see Les Paul. So he took me down, and I sat in a chair right on the floor where he was, about 10 feet from Les Paul. And I mean, I was frozen there. And he proceeded to do the whole show, which was absolutely marvelous. And when the show was over, I watched where he went. He went in the back, and he went up a flight of stairs and through a doorway, which I figured went into a hall and a dressing room. So I kind of snuck around. I didn't make a direct line because I figured I'd be stopped. So I weaved around different ways, and I got up that stairway, and I wanted to get through that door before anybody saw me. And I jumped through the door, and I was in the dressing room. And there was Mary and Les, and I didn't realize that was the dressing room. And anyway, Les looked at me and said, "Can I help you?" And so I proceeded to tell him who I was, and so he was so marvelous. And he heard I played guitar. He reached over and got his guitar, handed it to me, and says, "Play something." And I'm like this. Play something. So anyway, we had a good conversation. He gave me his address at home in California and everything, and we would write back and forth, and he'd always answer my letters. And he said one of his trips out, he bought property, and he was going to build a house in New Jersey. And so I knew where his new home was, so I went to see him there. And he was very, very nice to me all the time. And I started recording multiple guitars, and I started sending to Les to listen to them, and he'd critique them. And finally, I was getting so good that all of a sudden he didn't write me back anymore. And the windup is he left Capitol Records and went with Columbia, and my recordings went to Capitol, and they pressed them. And there's a big EP up there. And the EP was in a jukebox in Cincinnati, which they use as a test program. And in a week, I was number 5 on the jukebox. So everybody got excited, and it went back in another 3 days, and I was number 2 on the jukebox. And so they got real excited, and the song that was number 1 at the time was The Stripper by David Rose, which was a hit all over the country. So it created some excitement with Capitol. And I did some recording, and then later I recorded with Dot Records, and later after I just did things independently. But Les Paul was one of my great, great idols, and I am so grateful for all the things he used to answer and try to help me with, and he was just wonderful. And I never forget the man. He was just a marvelous man.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, sometime as like I said, I get on the phone with him, and because even it's hard to, and I know a guy like yourself, there's so much that's happened, and Les is, he's just there at home. He was kind of by, the time he was 97, he said he'd sleep until the next Monday, so he'd go do that gig. You know what I mean? He just
I don't know how he did that. That is a very grueling thing.
Yeah.
Because when he would finish his late show, he would be there till 2:30 in the morning signing autographs for people. As a matter of fact, one of my girl students, who I'm doing a CD with right now, I kept telling her, when you go to New York, go see Les.
Yeah.
Go see Les. He's not going to be around long.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
year before he died, she went and she met him.
Yeah.
And she's got a picture with him.
Well, when I recorded him for my Jimmy Rogers documentary, we're in Vegas, it's 1:30 in the morning, and he's drinking a beer on the bus, and just as spry and witty, and it's just amazing.
He had a sense of humor.
Oh, yeah.
Matter of fact, when he said, I'm going to send you a picture of Mary and I. And he said...
Here, wait, let me record this. All right. Okay, go.
Talking about Les Paul, his sense of humor was absolutely marvelous. I mean, he could have been a stand-up comic, but everything came off the top of his head. Not in the way of jokes, but reality. And but that time when I first met him, and he said, I'm going to send you an autographed picture of Mary and I. And he said, if you want, you could paint a mustache on Mary. You know, he said, it doesn't make any difference, you know. And he was just funny as all get out. And Mary just adored him. She loved him so much. And they were such a charming team. But what happened later in years, you know, they were getting on, and Mary was getting a little tired. And Mary said, Les, you know, I really don't want to travel anymore. And she said, it's just getting too hard. And we don't really have to do it, you know, because he had the Les Paul guitar going and so many things. And he got a little upset, and he said, well, you know, if you're not going to work with me, then I don't know if you want to live with me. And they broke up a beautiful, beautiful marriage and a great, great career. And Les kept trying to find girl singers after that. He even auditioned some girls that I had worked with in New Jersey. And nobody could follow Mary Ford. Colleen Summers was her real name. And how did Les find her? He went to his dear friend Gene Autry, and he said, you know, I'm looking for a girl singer. And Gene Autry said, well, we have this little vocal group. And he said, in the group is a real cute gal, and she sings marvelous. She can sing harmony, anything, just like that, without studying and practicing it. And so anyway, Les called her and invited her to go out to his house, which was on North Curzon Way in Hollywood. And Les then, at that time, had his studio in his garage. Well, anyway, Les was out in front of the house, and he was mowing the lawn, and Mary came driving up, and she sees Les there, and she says, excuse me. She said, I'm looking for Les Paul. And he said, oh, he's probably back in his garage. He's always back there. So anyway, she said, okay, thank you. And she starts around the house, and Les runs around the other side of the house, and he gets in the garage, and he sits in a chair with his back to the door. And she knocked on the door and opened it, and she said, excuse me. She said, I'm looking for Les Paul. And he swings the chair around, and he said, you found him. And that's the way he was. Always off the wall with something. Les Paul was always trying to record and find ways. When he did the electronic pickup, and he took the telephone headset and he put it on a railroad track, and et cetera, which you've probably heard about. Les was always searching for a good device. He was cutting vinyls for a while, and he was using a Cadillac flywheel as a balance wheel for this turntable, but he was always searching. And of course, at the time, he was recording with the Les Paul Trio and backing up Bing Crosby. And Bing Crosby, of course, just loved Les. I mean, who wouldn't? So one day, Bing Crosby decided to do a little surprise. And Bing Crosby drove over to Les's Hollywood house, and Les was in the garage. And Bing Crosby went in the back, and he said, by the way, Les, he said, I have something for you in the car. And so Les said, really? Why don't you bring it in? He said, no, you gotta come out and help me. So Les goes out with Bing Crosby, and they open the trunk, and there's an Ampex. And Ampex is the three initials of the gentleman who invented it, and EX is experimental. So anyway, here's this Ampex, and Les Paul just, I mean, he was drooling. Couldn't wait to get it in the garage and start using it immediately. And that's the first machine where he reversed the heads and did all this stuff, so he was getting a slapback echo, and he was able to overdub because he'd hear the the last track, and he'd play on top of it, and he'd record, and so on and so forth. So Bing Crosby was instrumental in helping Les get this whole thing started. And that was a great advance to all of electronics and all these singers and players today, because people, they use on a vocal the first line in track 1, the second line from track 6, the third line from track. They can composite something because they can never sing it all the way through correctly. When you work with Sinatra, I work with Streisand, beginning to end, perfect. No overdubs, no nothing. It was all just right then and there, bang, and it's done. And that day is gone, and it's not going to happen anymore.